Most people hear about compounding as if it is just a financial formula, a useful concept, a smart investing principle, something you are supposed to understand one day. But in real life, compounding feels much quieter than that. At the beginning, it barely looks like anything. You save a little, you invest a little, time passes, and for a while, the results seem almost too small to matter. That is the stage where many people lose interest, not because the strategy is wrong, but because the progress feels invisible. And that is exactly what makes long-term compounding so powerful. Its strength is not in how impressive it looks early on. Its strength is in what happens when growth is allowed to build on itself for long enough. That is the key idea. Compounding means your gains do not simply add up. They begin to generate gains of their own. Over time, that changes the shape of growth completely. What starts as something slow and modest can eventually become surprisingly strong. But that only happens if time is allowed to do its work. And that is where patience becomes a real financial advantage. Most people are naturally drawn to immediate results. We like visible progress. We like fast feedback. We like the feeling that our effort is producing something now. Compounding does not usually work like that. It asks for consistency before excitement. It asks for discipline before reward. It asks you to keep going when the results still look small. That is difficult because the early phase can feel almost disappointing. You do the right things, but the visible change is limited. And if you do not understand what is happening beneath the surface, it is easy to assume that nothing important is happening at all. But something important is happening. The base is growing. And once that base gets larger, future growth has more to build on. That is why compounding starts slowly and then becomes more noticeable later. It is not because the system suddenly changed. It is because repetition finally reached a scale where the effect became visible. That is also why reinvestment matters so much. When gains are left in the system, they increase the foundation for future returns. The process becomes cumulative. Small growth leads to slightly larger growth, and then that larger growth leads to something even greater. This is why long-term compounding rewards patience in a way that short-term thinking never can. Because short-term thinking asks, what did I get this month? Compounding asks, what can this become over the next 10 years if I stay consistent? That is a completely different way of thinking. And once you understand that, your relationship with progress begins to change. You stop expecting everything valuable to happen quickly. You become more comfortable with slow beginnings. You begin to see consistency as a strength, not as something boring or passive. In finance, that shift matters a lot. Because some of the most powerful outcomes are not created by dramatic moves. They are created by steady decisions repeated long enough. That is the real power of long-term compounding. It turns patience into strategy. It turns time into an advantage. And it shows that slow growth is not weak growth. In many cases, it is simply growth that has not fully revealed its strength yet. And that naturally leads to the next question. If time makes compounding so powerful, then why does capital usually compound faster than labor? That is exactly what we will explore next.